रजत ऑडिबल है? रजत,
यस बॉस, गुड इवनिंग।
गुड इवनिंग। कैमरा ऑन करके
सही।
कैमरा ऑन करके देख ले।
हाँ, अब सही है बॉस।
हाँ हाँ, दिख रहा है। स्क्रीन भी करके देख ले एक बार, ऐसे तो हो जाएगा।
हाँ,
स्क्रीन शेयर करके
शेयर
देख।
स्क्रीन।
क्या करूंगा ना, थोड़ा सा प्रैक्टिकली आई ट्राई एंड एक्सप्लेन कि बैक इंजरीज में क्या क्या होता है एंड हाउ टू काइंड ऑफ मैनेज देम, व्हेन टू रेफर देम एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट. सो आई विल नॉट गो वेरी टेक्निकल. आई विल ट्राई एंड बी थोड़ा सा मोर प्रैक्टिकल एंड होपफुली इट विल बेनिफिट यू. थोड़े भी टेक अवेज आपको मिल जाए तो आई थिंक माय टॉक विल बी सक्सेसफुल. So when we talk about back injuries now, so whenever anybody is participating in obviously sport, injuries to any part of the spine is obviously possible. जैसे बाकी के joints, muscles, tendon injuries होते हैं, वैसे back injuries भी है. But fairly uncommon रहता है the number, volume. So if you say according to whatever data that is there, not Indian obviously because we lack having a lot of data, but up to 20% of all injuries that occur in sports, they involve the lower back mainly. So that is something that I can kind of say. तो उस हिसाब से देखा जाए तो परसेंटेज है, not that it is not there, but acute injuries बहुत कम देखने को मिलती हैं, and that is where we are going to talk today. So what I want to do is break this down into four kind of areas. Okay. One is the neck, जिसको सर्वाइकल बोलते हैं, जो ऊपर का ऑब्वियसली सर के नीचे वाला हिस्सा जो नेक का होता है वो. मिड बैक है जो चेस्ट के पीछे का हिस्सा होता है. थोरैसिक जो है, फिर होता है लोअर बैक जो लंबोपेल्विक रीजन बोलते हैं, और लास्टली जो है वो पेल्विक और सेक्रल एरिया जो एकदम टेल बोन, मंकी बोन जिसको बोलते हैं. So these are the things that we want to briefly talk about. So as I said, ज़्यादा टेक्निकल नहीं जाऊंगा. मुझे ना एनाटॉमी ज़्यादा एक्सप्लेन करनी है, ना मुझे वहाँ की ब्लड सप्लाई और नर्व सप्लाई के बारे में बात करनी है, बिकॉज इट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड फॉर टुडेज टॉपिक. लेट अस ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड मोर अबाउट इंजुरीज एंड देयर मैनेजमेंट. ओके. अगर हम लोग नेक की बात करें तो उसके पहले ना क्विकली मैं बोलता हूँ कि एनाटॉमी क्यों मालूम होनी चाहिए, स्पेशली जो स्पोर्ट्स फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट है जिनको टेक्निकली ट्रीट करना है, तो उन लोगों को ऑब्वियसली दे नीड टू नो दैट small areas, because there are a lot of vertebrae in the whole spinal column. that make a rib cage और scapula है because वो back का ही portion हो जाता है. there is sacrum and hip joints because वो भी back से connected है. ligaments है, muscles है, जो core के भी muscles आते हैं, और paraspinal मतलब spinal column को जो support करते हैं वो भी muscles आते हैं. और सबसे important है जो हम लोग कभी-कभी भूल जाते हैं ना, वो fascia है. so I think that there are certain elements ये एनाटॉमी में भी जिसके ऊपर हम लोग को बात करनी चाहिए, और जिससे हमको थोड़ा सा और इंफॉर्मेशन मिले, और किसको ट्रीट करना है वो थोड़ा सा आसान हो जाता है. नाउ व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट वर्टिब्रे, यू ऑल नो कि सबको पता होता है, जब स्कूल में भी थोड़ा बहुत एनाटॉमी जो लोग पढ़ते हैं कि नेक में 7 वर्टिब्रेज होते हैं, फिर रिब केज के पीछे मतलब जो थोरैक्स होता है वहां पे 12 होते हैं, फिर लंबर में 5 होते हैं, सेक्रम में 5 होते हैं, उसके नीचे कॉक्सिक्स आता है जो टेल बोन है तो मंकी बोन बोलते हैं उसको. तो ये जो है ये बेसिकली वर्टिब्रल कॉलम है. अभी आप सोचो कि ये इतना फ्लेक्सिबल पूरा वर्टिब्रल कॉलम होता है, दैट इज बेसिकली in spite of being so much flexible and it turns in every direction, there is a lot of muscles that support these particular spine, and that is the reason why, if I may put it right, that unless and until you have a massive kind of an impact, it doesn't get injured, because उसमें flexibility बहुत ज्यादा होती है. और जब होता है impact इतना severe, तो फिर वो थोड़ा सा इंजरी का ग्रेड जो है that also becomes a little more catastrophic. and that too in specific areas. So, wo areas, what are those, and how we need to kind of cater to that is something that we should look at. Okay. Now, rib cage hai, everybody know that ribs jo hai, those they are connected to the chest samne se, and obviously spinal column piche se. So it becomes very important again that the rib cage, wherein जो भी intercostal muscles है, there are a lot of other areas like the scapula, जो thoracic bone है, that kind of glides over the rib cage from behind. So these things are important to understand the mechanics. Again, coming back to the sports physiotherapists who are going to treat shoulder injuries, they need to also understand that anatomy of scapula and the movement of the scapula is equally important. And because we're talking about back again, it comes into back again, and it can also come into shoulder, and obviously, so you need to remember that these mechanics are also important. Ligaments and muscles, again I don't want to go into details because बहुत सारे muscles है back में जो deep muscles से लेके superficial muscles तक और neck से लेके बिल्कुल sacrum तक और glutes तक काफी सारे muscles आते हैं. And because as I said, if you're treating and technically handling them, then you need to know the details of those muscles. But as we go along, I will kind of point out to certain muscles which are more important and more practical to follow. Fascia, why I said that this is more important is purely because lot of aches and pains are related to the fascia that covers these muscles in and around the lower back, and some of it in the mid back, and obviously some on the trapezius and the neck. Once you start understanding more about the treatment options, you will come to know why fascia is also important. Okay. Now let us come to neck injuries. I'm basically, as I said, don't go on the image because it is just very blurred right now, but it is basically there is classification रहता है neck injuries में, but I don't want to go into details. What we need to understand with neck injuries is that the most important, or rather what do you say, complex thing that you need to understand when you refer the patient or what happens during the particular episode on field or while playing or while training is something that needs attention. So one is obviously the worst is the fracture of any of the cervical vertebrae. That is like kind of something that needs too much of expertise to handle on field. But whiplash injuries is something that everybody should know. What is whiplash injury? I'll come to that when I explain you a little later. Pinched nerves, bony spurs, herniated discs, very, very common again. A lot of people will come, or other athletes will come to you when they are into pain, where they get referred pain into their arms and things like that. Although this is not a typical sports injury, this can happen at any age, and most of the senior citizens also might come up with these particular ailments. But people who are into recreational sports and they play, they might get into these particular things. Neck sprains, very, very common. It could be when they get up from bed and they might come up with some sprain, or when they're playing, there's a lot of jerk on one of the neck muscles and they might get their neck sprains done. So this is something that is commonly seen again in adolescent athletes who play contact sports. Overuse injuries or stiff neck, again, very, very important. Once you don't recover from a lot of injuries or other training sessions, and you work a lot on your training sessions, be it strength training or otherwise, and you don't recover well, there are chances that you might get a stiff neck, which needs to be dealt with. As I said, fractures are very, very important, and they are kind of a little serious because there are a lot of important structures that are there behind those vertebrae, cervical vertebrae, which is a question of life and death when it happens. Especially when it is higher up near the skull, it is more dangerous to the life. But when it is little lower, then you might land up with some very serious problems like quadriplegia and all. So there are things that have been reported in sports where high contact sports are there, where they kind of get into a lot of knocks and then they figure out, that they have fracture. So dealing with that on-field and emergency management during those particular things becomes very, very crucial. Just to give you an example that, whenever you've seen matches like, American football or rugby, where two players, the nature of the sport itself is that they have to kind of bang into each other, and that during those basically activities, a lot of neck injuries are reported, and they have a spine surgeon as well as a neurosurgeon every time present during their matches. So it is very different from what we see in other sports, where only a sports doctor or a sports physiotherapist or a team of sports doctors, sports physiotherapists, and an orthopedic surgeon and things like that are supporting the team during an important competitions in other sports. But when it comes to these sports where there is a high impact, a high collision in rugby and American football and things like that, where there you will see that they have a spine surgeon as well as a neurosurgeon present on field. So that important it is. So whenever there is some kind of a injury that happens to this particular cervical spine, those are the people that they deal with it on field, because the early management starts right at that particular point. Now, there is something which most of the athletes, they sleep in poor position and they come up with some neck pain the next day, either to the coach or they'll complain that their neck is not free. So these things are again very, very common and can be dealt with, like, just by either sending them to a physiotherapist who will kind of just review and then manage accordingly. I'll come to how we manage these small issues. As far as examination, as I said, I don't want to get into more details, because a lot of physiotherapists will understand, that history and mechanism of injury is very, very important when it comes to cold cases. Observational finding that whether the neck is aligned straight or whether there is some issue with regards to imbalance that is seen only by observation. Lot of active and passive ranges that we can do. See, neck again has lot of movement. As I said, the whole spine, right from the neck right up to the lower spine or the lumbar region, there is a lot of movement that happens naturally, and that natural movement needs to be preserved. So whether there are any restrictions, you need to find out whether there is a cause for that restriction that you need to identify and treat accordingly. So normal range of motion, which, as I said, be it front and back, be it to the side, and be it only ear to shoulder. These are the three main things that need to be understood, and whether you need to compare whether the right side and the left side are kind of same, or whether there is any pain while doing those movements. So these particular things that you need to understand, then you can palpate and check whether there are any points which are painful when you touch, be it on the near the base of the skull, or be it on the side of the neck right up to the trapezius, where there are any tightness, there is pain. Special tests, I don't want to go into details, but something which is more of neurological, whether there's any other special test that is done according to what you find in the range of motion or palpation, you can go ahead and talk. Now, treatment option, as I said, very, very simple again. Whenever you get any stiff neck or some sort of a spasm, myofascial release is something that most of the physiotherapists are. It is just about giving a proper release onto that fascia. As I said again, why that fascia, which I was talking about in the anatomy, is important, because the muscle and the fascia needs to be released. So myofascial is muscle and fascia. So once we release this, a lot of aches and pains, at least some percentage, go down even before you take any medications and stuff. Sometimes you need to manipulate the cervical joint and mobilize the cervical joints as well, so that they become a little more free. The nerves that are getting pinched might just kind of breathe a little more than when you do some mobilization techniques. ULTT is nothing but upper limb tension test, where there is some sort of a referred pain that you start getting along the upper arm. You can either, this is not only, as I said, a diagnostic tool, but also it can be you can do this neural stretches to get relief from that referred pain as well at times.
exercise prescription, very very important again. So every time I'm going to stress on certain points जो important है और जो सबसे ज़्यादा practically फायदा होता है उससे. So the exercise prescription again is very important. Why? Is because even if you do थोड़ा सा myofascial release कर दिया, you do mobilization manipulation, but it has to be followed by doing some exercise prescription, which means that you have to prescribe exercises to the athlete where they should not again go back to the either same spasm or even stiffness or tightness. So you have to kind of give them a prescription according to what you find in the neck. As I said, muscle relaxants. A lot of my orthopedic friends basically start off with muscle relaxants because they help a lot when you see a lot of spasm and stiffness in the neck and other muscle groups around the neck, and that helps with the other modalities as well. Taping and needling, again, these adjuncts are very, very important. Now, as I said, that there are schools of thought when it comes to taping and needling, but personally, I feel that wherever it is required, you should practice this because there are good results when it comes to certain taping techniques and needling as and when required. Not every time or every patient needs taping and needling, but most of them who comes with repetitive spasms and a lot of trigger points in the trapezius and all, for them needling definitely helps. Taping, I take it from two perspectives. One is if the athlete is currently wanting to continue playing in a match and has that discomfort in the neck. Let's talk only about the neck right now because taping is used for mid back, lower back, everywhere. There are different types of taping. I don't want to get into details of those techniques, but definitely taping, kinesio taping or rigid taping helps as and when they are indicated. But I've seen, or rather even you people must have seen when you watch a lot of sports on TV that people have some different colored tapes on the neck, which you see. So those things are helpful in many players because they feel comfort and are the idea of treating anybody is to giving them comfort. So let us put it that way. So basically it should be dealt with only when you know that this is going to help. Just don't do it for the sake of it because if it is not going to help and if you're not confident of taping, don't tape it. But if you know the right techniques and it is going to help the athlete, you should definitely do that. Now, investigations only when required, as I said, depending on the history, you'll come to know whether you're going to require X-rays or CT scan or MRI, and accordingly you can take it ahead and refer to orthopedic surgeon or a spine surgeon or a neurosurgeon accordingly and take it ahead from there. Now, when it comes to neck, as I said, other than the fracture, we have to understand what is whiplash injury. Whiplash injury is nothing but a sudden jerk that a player gets when doing any contact sport to the neck. Now, this example which I'm going to show you the video is all about an ice hockey, obviously, but similar impacts can happen in any sport. It does not necessarily mean that, but ice hockey, again, as I said, rugby, ice hockey, these things are they're high impact sports where two players can collide with each other. In other sports, be it football or basketball, there are collisions that happen, but the impact is not very great because the nature of the sport itself is not something that you need to collide with each other. Now, when you just see this particular video, you'll come to know that two players, they collide with each other and they fall off. Now, once you go into the details, you'll find out how it impacts the neck. Now, once you see this, you will come to know where does it hamper more. So as soon as this neck, so whiplash is nothing but having this jerk either front way or back side. So whenever you get this particular injury in any of these particulars, so the whole cervical spine, it goes with a very fraction of second. It goes right from, and if you see those red areas, you will see that there are tears from outside, from behind as well as forward. So these things are common in most of the sports. Now, whiplash injuries will give rise to a lot of pain, discomfort, along the both the sides of the necks, in the arms, and you will feel, you know, there is this some definite discomfort which is continuously coming with all movements of the neck. So you have to take the player out. You cannot let the player continue playing with that particular condition. You also need to understand that this whiplash is might just be a tip of the iceberg. Is there anything underlying? You should always think of something serious because the impact is very high. So you need to understand that that athlete, that player might need more investigations. And uh, technically, if you put it, it's not a thumb rule, but recovery from whiplash injury might take up to somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks as well. So depending on how high grade the injury is, but then they recover well and they can come back and play. So this is one. Now we'll move on to mid-back injuries. Now, why I want to not waste a lot of time on explaining what mid-back injuries is, purely because they are not very common. Why they are not acute injuries in mid-back are not very common is because there's a lot of flexibility in mid-back. Okay, so be it the rib cage, no, be it the muscles surrounding the mid-back, there is, even if there is a impact, the muscles and the rib cage can take a lot of shock, and they don't get into that pain unless, as I said, it is a very heavy or direct impact. Then only you might get that kind of a pain, but not otherwise. What is more common in mid-back is just muscle spasms and strains that, as I said, they're common in neck as well as lower back. But in mid-back, usually you don't find more problems, especially in acute cases. It can happen in cold cases purely because if you don't condition the back properly, if you're not doing your exercises properly, if you're not doing your fitness properly, then you might land up with some problems in your lower mid-back as well. Herniated discs, again, मोस्ट ऑफ यू ऑल नो कि डिस्क प्रॉब्लम्स कैसे होते हैं एंड क्या है, तो उस हिसाब से डिस्क में सर्वाइकल प्रॉब्लम डिस्क में भी हो सकता है, देयर इज मिड बैक में भी डिस्क हो सकता है, लोअर बैक में तो कॉमन ही है. सो दीज थिंग्स अगेन कैन हैपन इन मिड बैक एज वेल. Most of the people, they complain of tightness in the mid back and resulting in restrictions. So basically a lot of athletes who complain of mid back tightness, either it could be because of not having good mobility in their mid-back vertebrae, the thoracic vertebrae, or the supporting musculature. So these things, again, as I said, can be treated by MFR, the myofascial release, which I was talking about, be it needling or be it otherwise as well. Fractures not very common in athletes in mid-back unless, as I said, there's a heavy impact. Fractures mid-back may common है for elderly people who kind of get an impact when they are, when they land up on their glutes or something, or could be something that they just kind of sit without support from a chair. They land up on the ground, they fall off from a chair, but they land up directly on their glutes, and then there could be a compression fracture, but not somebody, an athlete or young players who they don't get these fractures at all. Again, mid examination, history is important. Why this has happened. More importantly, you can just tell the athlete to bend forward, bend backward, bend sideways, twisting in standing. You can go. Quadruped is a position where you be in a crawling position. जैसे बच्चा रहता है दोनों हाथ और knees पे, that is called as quadruped position. So उस position में भी you can do some twisting movement and see whether the mid back is actually in pain or discomfort or some restrictions, and accordingly you can start treating. Multi-segmental rotation, again, I don't want to go into details, but there are certain techniques that you can find out कि what level पे कैसा कहाँ पे pain हो रहा है, and then accordingly आप उस हिसाब से उसको treat कर सकते हैं. Treatment में again same है, मैंने बोला कि myofascial release very important again whenever you kind of release those tight structures around the mid back. The fascia, which is again very crucial again to give mobilization manipulation. Same thing like cervicals, exercise prescription, drugs, taping, needling as and when required, and investigations. So everything, the principally remains the same, but obviously, as I said, exercise prescription will change according to what you find in clinical examination. techniques of manipulation and mobilization change, technique of taping changes. So it all depends कि आपको किस कैसे क्या find out हुआ है उस clinical examination में, कैसा कहाँ दर्द है, and how crucial it is to investigate it further. So this was about mid back. Now moving on to the lower back, where this is fairly common. Very common problems are lower back injuries, and it is again more not related to the vertebrae directly, but they are mainly related to the muscles are surrounding your lower back. Now, why it is more common? Because there is lot of load on the lower back. Whenever you sit, stand, walk, jump, whatever you do, lower back takes majority of the load. It is most used. So whenever you bend down, whenever you get up, whenever you stand up from sitting position, lower back is used most, and obviously it is more vulnerable to muscle spasms, especially the QL, that is quadratus lumborum glutes. They are more connected in a way, so you get a lot of spasms in that muscle, which I'll talk about. As I said, because it is not there is nothing mainly to the muscles as well, but whenever you have those discs in between the two vertebrae, there is something called as an annular ring, where there are tears are very common again. It is very painful condition. Acutely, it is kind of makes the player not do his regular activities, also forget about playing. It needs to settle down. The annular tears heal by itself, but it needs time and obviously some physical therapy. Excuse me. Herniated disc, again, not very common in athletes because they train themselves really well to keep their back in shape, but it is common with weightlifters when they lift heavy weights during their training as well as competition, and they might land up with not only annular tears but herniated discs as well. Arthritis, not very common again, but it is worth mentioning because a lot of facet joints and these people complains of nag, and that needs to be excluded as well. Referred pain coming from abdominal organs, very important again, because we start treating the back and we forget that there could be something related to the abdominal structures. Especially as I tell you, there was just about a week back, I saw a wrestler coming to me for backache, and just by digging a little deep into the history, we came to know that he's got some burning in his burning while urinating and all. I immediately sent him for a sonography abdomen, and we could see that there was a small urinary calculi, which was actually giving him backache. So as soon as his calculi was removed, his back pain disappeared. So there are certain things that you cannot miss out. You have to understand that referred pain coming from certain other organs can also give rise to backache. Again, just a word of caution. If at all there is, you don't find clinically that it is not helping, some couple of things that you do routinely as you treat your back and it is not getting better, it is worthwhile to get it evaluated, referred to somebody, some specialist, and they can rule out other infections and clots as well. Just to quickly go what is more important in lower back is this muscle QL, quadratus lumborum, which is most commonly affected in practical clinical setup. We see a lot of athletes and other recreational players who land up with this particular muscle, which is a small muscle, as you see in the picture, where that muscle is into pain most of the time when they do basic activities like bending and all. Its action is obviously, it is more of a stabilizer of the lower spine, and training only that muscle is very difficult. You cannot isolate that muscle and train that muscle. You'll have to train the whole lower back, including the core, to kind of work around it. Lot of players, they get tightness and spasm in that QL because either, as I said, they lack core strength, or they are overtrained, or they don't kind of do their strength and conditioning properly. Lot of improper distribution of the load also happens when they do. Suppose a tennis player who is obviously dominating, when they keep on serving a lot and not taking good care of their lower back, a lot of load come and the imbalance happens between the two sides, and then one of those muscles might get into repeated spasm, and the load might also come onto the abdominal muscles. So you need to be very, very careful. Lot of referred pain that can happen because of the QL. It could be the upper glutes that gets on the side of, like you see those red dots which are marked on the picture. That obviously is an area which gets some sort of a pain if your QL is affected. Just a quick mention about other muscles. Very, very important, because these muscles run along the whole spine, but especially they are focused more, they have the major bulk on the lower spine as well. So these muscles are not only supportive muscles, but they take a lot of insults as well when you don't work around training them properly. So a lot of lordosis that kind of you see exaggerated, or rather loss of lordosis, is because of these muscles. They are again, they work, they are an agonist to core muscles, the abs as well. So you need to understand that these muscles, although they run all along the spine, they are still important muscles which needs to be trained. They once you have a good scientific structured strength and conditioning program, you can definitely get away with aches and pains along these muscles. So weakness in these muscles obviously relate directly to direct load on the discs which are there, the intervertebral disc, and you might get into these particular disc issues. Treating these lower back muscles, again, as I said, generic treatment protocols, first and foremost is reducing the pain. You can use any adjuncts which I have already mentioned, be it MFRs, be it myofascial releases, as it is called, needling and cupping and taping and supporting, and giving some mobilizations with movement, only static and active. We can start off doing that. Give time to recovery. Don't force them, because lower back takes a lot of load, as I said, and it becomes important for you to understand that a structured rehab program where the physiotherapist understands कि जितना load वो lower back ले रही है वापस, is that muscle ready to take the load. So structured program or progressive rehab program definitely helps. Stress fractures, quick note on it is because we also call this spondylolysis, where if you see that red line, that basically is a fracture that happens in cases where young athletes who do repetitive, acrobatic movements, they might land up with this problem. And once this problem actually advances, then you get something called as spondylolisthesis, where the vertebra slides over the other. So this slipping of vertebra is not a very good sign for an athlete. They need to recover well. Most of the time, conservative management help, but at times you need to fix that vertebrae by doing a surgery as well. But before that only, if you identify this problem, that this is getting into a stress reaction and a stress fracture, immediately you should stop overuse, and there could be. So as I said, conservatively it can be managed. Now, who lands up with these stress fractures? I'll tell you. Surgery, as I said, SOS. Causes, as I said, mostly fast bowlers जो है cricket के, gymnasts है, rugby players है, where there is a lot of load onto the lower spine, where fast bowlers का कैसा है कि if they don't maintain their load management, in the sense any cricketers or any fast bowlers who are training for that particular sport, they need to understand that during a week they need to follow a structured program where number of overs that they bowl in a week, or rather even in a session, needs to be distributed scientifically. You cannot have too many overs bowled during that session or during the week, and consecutively over the weeks, you might land up with these stress fractures. Gymnasts, because of their movement, lot of flexibility, and they need to kind of be it rhythmic or artistic gymnasts, they has to kind of do a lot of maneuvers which involves stress on that particular lower back, and they might land up in stress fractures. Rugby players, as I said, because of the impact and also training, they might land up. So mostly this happens in young and adolescent players who don't monitor their training load. So the coaches obviously should remember that young players, if you push them a little more, you need to understand that they have to follow some scientific guidelines in terms of how much you should load it, and start monitoring it session wise, so that they don't land up in overtraining. And quickly giving improper warm up and corrective techniques, very important. Again, that you should not have too many things that you leave it for some other day, like warm up and corrective techniques. You have to follow a routine. Make sure that you warm up every single time you train or play, and you cool down properly. If you don't have a structured strength and conditioning program, again, you lose out some loopholes, be it strengthening your core, progressively strengthening your core at whatever phase of periodization you are in, and accordingly you can start working around it. Management, as I said, rest and recovery, very important. So most of the stress fractures get better by, first is rest and getting recovery. Medications, because of there's a lot of inflammation there, pain is there, so you need to cover that. Bracing only if required, because there's a lot of spasm that happens because of that particular fracture, and you can brace it if required. Surgery only if it is, like as I said, too much of slipping of that vertebra that happens, over sliding of the vertebra happens, then you need to kind of fix it back, and that the spine surgeon can definitely help. Exercise prescription, again, very important at all stages. So be it you just had a stress fracture diagnosed, and you are advised rest, but there are certain exercises that you can do in the first phase, then you move on to the second phase. As I said, progressive exercise prescription is very important, and correction of the chin. Now, prevention again is very important. Once you know that you landed up with a stress fracture and you are recovered, then you need to understand that there is something that for prevention you have to follow during your training program, and that is how you're going to not land up with stress fracture again. Lastly, I want to kind of come down to sacrum and coccyx. That is the last tailbone that you see. Lot of SI joint pain. That is, the pelvic whole girdle on the backside. When you know that there's some pain in that particular area, it could be because of this SI joint, that is the sacroiliac joint, because of some inflammation, or even when there is a lot of stress on that area. History obviously will suggest whether it is just an inflammation or typical fall from this particular, even a chair height right up to you land up on your bum. You might end up with a coccyx fracture. Tenderness is very much seen in that particular area. So it is right at the base of your whole spine, right above your anal opening, where you get that tenderness and pain, which could be because of this particular coccyx or coccydynia. We call this pain around the coccyx. Sitting is very painful, especially on hard surfaces. In acute cases, you can't even sit on soft surfaces, that painful it is, especially when it is slightly dislocated. So how do we manage pain? You need to give some medication for getting the pain down or the inflammation down. Investigate if the fracture of the coccyx, especially after history of fall, that it is going to give rise to some sort of a if it is dislocated or not, you need to understand that. So investigate it. Offload, now very important. I've seen a lot of athletes getting better only by offloading that area. So whenever they sit, if you give them a coccyx pillow or a pillow that you see in the picture, where that area of the last tip of the spine does not even hit or rather touches the ground, and you sit on a pillow which is kind of made specifically for this problem, a lot of athletes have recovered really well. Otherwise, they get immense pain when they sit anytime. So these things are very, very important, and they have to sit for a length of time. Like whenever they sit, they should sit on this pillow if they have a problem. So it definitely reduces a lot of area. Local corticosteroid injections in some cases have helped if the pain doesn't subside after doing a lot of conservative management as well. Some athletes or some players who have a nasty fall and their coccyx is absolutely not in, like it has kind of subluxated, you can reduce it. There's a method that is practiced, a closed basical reduction under anesthesia. There is some method that you do, and you can just fix that thing temporarily, and then once it heals, then it basically gets back into position and the pain subsides. So this is about the coccyx pain. I think pelvic region, lastly, you need to understand that a lot of referred pain that comes from abdominal organs or the pelvic organs from the hips. Females, it is more common because of little more organs like uterus and the ovaries and the fallopian tubes and the other stuff they have. It arises from infections as well, maybe from the bladder or from nerve impactance. Very common again. If there are any nerves that gives rise to radiating pain, you need to check with the experts whether you have any other symptoms along with severe backache. It could be related to any of your other problems. As I said, ruling out other stuff, be it something to do with kidney, because you start treating for that muscle spasm, but there could be something related to your kidney. It can go into groin area. Consult your sports doctor or a physician or your expert to kind of rule out the possibility of other causes. And always remember that you have to keep open mind while treating injuries to the back. So I think this sums up everything. Management, as I said, your blood tests, investigations, x-rays will give you a great idea of why the pain is and where it is coming from. Use of proper medications will help you get rid of that pain. And as I said, it could not be related directly to the muscles of the back, but coming from somewhere else, and you need to take help, surgery only if it is advised by your experts, and rest till you feel better. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Dr. Ajit, for this beautiful demonstration, and you have covered almost each and everything related to the spinal injuries, whiplash, and the coccydynia, lower backache, stress fracture, everything. So indeed, I think this is going to help them a lot in their day-to-day practice. So guys, feel free to ask anything, and Ajit, you can take questions directly from the box also. So
I'll just
अब बैठा दे, अब मत आना, अब आधे घंटे बाद.
okay, I'll just take some questions here directly. Okay, see, some questions are very pertaining to a particular individual. So I'll try and answer some general questions rather than taking some very specific ones. As I said, diffuse posterior bulge, L4, L5, very common again. These things, as I said, will require most of the cases who have lower back pain. They can be treated without surgery. So again, with due respect to whatever diagnosis that comes up, but with physical therapy and good mobilization manipulation techniques, you can get away with avoiding surgery, especially if you don't have any major neurological deficits. Okay, this is one. Now, which type of exercise? Trupti is asking about old cervical fracture, C1 in 2009. See, very difficult to answer such questions unless we don't see you clinically, because we don't know whether there are issues pertaining to stiffness only, or whether it was fixed, the surgery was done, or whether there are other elements which are associated with your problem. So it could be because of your muscle stiffness. So make sure that you see a physical therapist who's expert in actually doing some mobilization and MFR techniques which can help you. What is Dhananjay is asking, what is disc protrusion? As I said, disc bulge, very, very common. where between the two vertebrae जो cushioning का एक disc होता है, that basically protrudes out through the annular stairway हो जाता है. अभी as I said, I don't want to go into the details, but it is basically disc protrusion जो है ना, वो जो cushioning होता है वो बाहर आके nerve को compress करता है. जो nerves जो होती है वो vertebrae से बाहर आती है, उसको compress जब हो जाता है तो then it starts to hurt, and that is disc protrusion. Management depends on what grade of protrusion you have and how much is the neurological symptoms. अगर आपको सिर्फ पेन है, डिस्कम्फर्ट है और हल्का सा बस न्यूरोलॉजिकल बस शुरुआत है, तो यू कैन डेफिनेटली स्टार्ट ऑफ विद डूइंग सम वेरी गुड फिजियोथेरेपी, एंड दैट इज एज आई सेड प्रोग्रेस फिजियोथेरेपी एक्सरसाइज से काफी कम हो जाता है पेन. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन वाज if doing a sprint may cause increased lumbar pain. Shubham is asking about sprinting. See, basically if you have pain, one thing that is an indication that you're supposed to address that pain. Now if the pain is severe and it aggravates when you sprint, obviously you cannot sprint, but that doesn't mean that you have to stop everything and not kind of just rest and not do anything at all, but you can at least go to jogging first, start rehab, and then you can go back to sprinting. So it doesn't mean that you have to stop sprinting, but make sure you diagnose that particular problem of yours. Dr. Lakveer is saying regarding lower back swelling and pain.
Connected with weightlifting, so I think this might be.
So basically swelling जो है ना, कभी ऐसा swelling नहीं दिखता है, man. You don't see a swelling in the lower back. It is always a muscle spasm, or there could be something else if you see a swelling there. That means you need to rule out whether that particular area which you feel that it is swollen, whether that swelling is only because of a visual kind of a thing where एक muscle बहुत tight हो जाता है, दूसरा muscle थोड़ा सा bulge हो जाता है, you see that uneven thing and you feel that that is swelling, then you need to just correct it by as I said, good physiotherapy. But if you feel that the swelling is a little more and it is nothing to do with, then you need to rule out and investigate whether you have some other issues as well.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah, just a minute. Let Ajit to take first the questions from the chat box, then you guys can unmute yourself and ask. Ajit, this is the someone he wants to ask about some muscle relaxants and.
Yes, is it likely relaxing when the students experience soreness of the back? No, I don't recommend taking muscle relaxant for people who have soreness, because see, you should differentiate between what soreness is and what pain is. Soreness is always because of activity. So if you have activity, if you've done something, say a heavy workout and your muscles are sore, please don't take any muscle relaxant, because that soreness will disappear on its own. Just give time for recovery. So you can do cold showers, you can do ice packs, but don't go in for taking muscle relaxant just because you want to feel better. You should be able to differentiate between what painful muscle is and what a sore muscle is, and it is very easy. All people who have done exercises will come to know that whenever they do a heavy exercise, their muscles become sore, and that soreness goes away in say 48 hours, or maybe a little more in some cases. But you should not consume medication to get rid of that soreness. Is there any relation? Rajeshwari is asking about abdominal strength with back pain, because there is a mixed opinion about sit-up, abdominal crunches exercise. Correct. So this is very true that there is a direct relation between your back pain and abdominal strength. As I said, because I covered only the back, but that in the back, the core also is involved, and core muscles, as I said, are very, very crucial. So if you have a weak core, and core involves muscles of the lower back, muscles on the sides, which is the transverses, and also muscles from the abdominals, that is the rectus and the good muscle groups that kind of holds the whole core together. Why it is important, and you should not do abdominal crunches exercises when you have backache, is because you're trying to insult that muscle more and more. So once you have a weak core, you need to understand that the program that you follow, first try and start off, or step by step you can progress from doing basic exercises of core strengthening do then heavy exercises of core strength. So there are too many exercises. If you look at any chart of core strengthening, you will see multiple exercises. So make sure that you segregate them properly, and then you can go ahead and continue doing your crunches exercises. But yes, if you have pain, you should avoid it. Shoulder dislocation, I think somebody must have covered, because shoulder, but still,
Yeah, you can respond, Ajit, if you want.
yeah. See, basically, shoulder dislocation injury in old age, I know it is not very common, but unless and until you have some impact or some movement that is causing repetitive shoulder dislocation, you need to address it, because every time you dislocate, there are chances that you are kind of eroding the cartilage, and you might land up with arthritis very soon. So if at all you're dislocating your shoulders every now and then, and you're trying to relocate it on your own or taking help of somebody, make sure that you see a orthopedic surgeon or a shoulder surgeon and get it rectified. Basketball coach, 10 years back I met with back pain. I'm still having back pain and neck pain. I'm having x-rays. So Mr. Ganesh is a basketball coach. See, basically not necessarily that there might be some problems that can be seen on an MRI. Let me tell you clinically as well, there are a lot of issues of muscle imbalances that cannot be seen on an MRI. MRI will show you only things that are not basically like disc spaces and some nerve compressions, or be it some other pathologies that are very much visible on an MRI. But when it comes to muscle imbalances, when it comes to some issues with fascia, when it comes to issues with muscle tightnesses, these things will never be seen on an MRI. So you'll need some clinical evaluation. Why for the last 10 years you've been having these problems, especially when, as I said, because the strength of certain muscle groups are lacking, you need to identify whether you have done proper rehab for those particular muscles. And again, I'm saying that it could not be only the lower back that is a problem. It could be your core, it could be your abdominals that are weak. It could be something related to your pelvic muscles as well that is giving rise to your pain. So once you identify exactly, and good that you don't have anything on your X-rays and MRIs, I think then it is easier for a sports medicine doctor or a sports physiotherapist to treat you, because there is no major pathology that is identified in your problem. So correcting muscle imbalances, strengthening it properly, getting a good mobility. As I said, it could be restriction, and you could be just pulling on with your restricted movements. That also can be a reason why you might be having that pain. So I think get it examined, make sure that your ranges are proper first, make sure that your strength and your symmetries are proper, and I think you will come out of this problem and you can have a pain-free basketball in not only coaching but playing recreationally as well.
So I think Mohammad Amzad is raising his hand. Amzad, please unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, sir. Thanks for your informative presentation, sir. Sir, my question is, do you agree with me that most of the foot conditions may be a predisposing factor to develop neck pain and back pain? Conditions like flat foot, high arch, and metatarsals. Do you agree with me, sir?
Yes, definitely I do agree, Mohammad, and that's a very good question. Because a lot of athletes, not, as I said, this is not an acute problem, but over a period of time, when you see players with flat feet, they might not have any complaints or problems to start off with, but they might at some point of time come back to you or complain of neck pain and back pain, and you need to correct those mechanics by giving them orthotics for their flat feet, or even if they are high arches, then you need to correct those mechanics as well. So I completely agree, Mohammad, and this definitely needs to be identified while you do a complete evaluation or assessment of an athlete.
Thank you. And Farooq, you want to ask anything? Farooq Ahmed.
Yes, sir. Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Farooq, sir, my question is, my question is very simple regarding the rotational exercise of hip rotation, neck rotation. Are these rotational exercises advisable or not, sir? Just tell me, please, sir.
Yes,
Rotational
Farooq,
exercise because we
good
keep
question,
rotating
Farooq.
them.
Yeah, I can. There is some disturbance, but I got your question, Farooq. See, good question. Neck rotations definitely are not advisable in the current scenario. A lot of research has been done with neck movements now, and previously, 10 years ago, people were, or rather, even now, some people follow doing neck rotations. But if you adhere to doing some very specific neck movements as an exercise, just for the mobility. If you just understand, as I said in the beginning when I was talking about the neck, that the neck moves in 3 directions. This is front and back, sideways, and then one is ear to shoulder. So these 3 movements needs to be understood a little more when you start actually doing either warm up or training. A lot of people, they do neck rotations front clockwise, anti-clockwise, but the neck is not supposed to move in that. It is not meant to be done doing a circular movement. So you should avoid, just go with the full range of movement that is advisable, and you can just, as I said, correct it if there are any restrictions. As far as hip go, as I said again, hip doesn't have a circumduction movement like shoulder, and the other ranges that you see with the hip, be it we do those gate openings and closing exercises, be it taking hip flexions and extensions. These things definitely can be done, but rotations of the hip is again not very much advisable. You are trying to insert some other tissue by doing this, so you should try and avoid those as well.
Okay, thank you. And Lakhvir, can you ask? Lakhvir.
Good evening. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन लोअर बैक पेन के लिए है कि जो लोअर बैक पेन राइट साइड है, क्या वो पेन अभी हमारे एथलीट को हुई है 4-5 दिन पहले सर, तो जब हम फिजियो के पास गए तो फिजियो कह रहा है कि जो पेल्विक ज्वाइंट है इसकी मेम्ब्रेन जो है वो ब्रेक हुई है, इसकी वजह से इसको लोअर बैक पेन है. इज इट पॉसिबल सर?
देखिए, ऐसा है कि क्लिनिकली अभी ऐसी कोई एंटिटी है नहीं कि पेल्विक मेम्ब्रेन रप्चर जैसा कुछ मैंने सुना नहीं है कि उसका मतलब क्या अलग हो सकता है कि उसने क्या बोला है, तो आई डोंट वांट टू कमेंट ऑन बेसिकली व्हाट. लेकिन अगर राइट साइड पे ग्लूट्स के ऊपर लोअर बैक के वहां पे अगर पेन है, तो वो किस एक्टिविटी में किस ट्रेनिंग के दौरान हुआ है, और वो अगर पेन का मूवमेंट से कितना डायरेक्ट रिलेशन है वो देखना है. इसका मतलब क्या है कि अगर बैठे बैठे भी पेन हो रहा है, उठते भी पेन हो रहा है, तो इसका मतलब है कि वो मसल अगर कुछ स्पैज़म में गया है या तो कुछ इम्पैक्ट हुआ है उसके ऊपर. तो उस हिसाब से अगर 2-4 दिन ही हुए हैं तो किसी को दिखा के पहले तो उसको वो पेन को कम करना जरूरी है. तो पेन को कम करना है तो इधर उसको अक्यूट हुआ है तो आइस पैक लगाया क्या, उसको मेडिकेशन कुछ जरूरत है, अगर ज्यादा पेन है तो कुछ दिया है क्या, और फिर अगर मसल स्पैज़म में है तो उसको हल्के से कोई किसी ने ट्रीट किया है क्या, वो देखना बहुत जरूरी है. लेकिन बिना इन्वेस्टिगेशन के कुछ रप्चर दिखना वो एरिया में बहुत मुश्किल है क्लिनिकली, कि उधर कुछ ऐसा रप्चर हो गया ऐसा क्लिनिकली ऊपर से बिना कुछ इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने बहुत डिफिकल्ट है. तो आई डोंट थिंक कि उसको थोड़ा सा 2 दिन जाने तो शो इट टू समबडी अगेन एंड मेक श्योर दैट उसका पेन कम हो जाए पहले.
यस सर, उसको अभी टेप लगा के दिया है जैसे फिजियो ने, तो उससे पेन थोड़ा रिलीफ है.
करेक्ट. तो इसका मतलब ये है कि वो सुपरफिशियल ही कुछ रहेगा. तो टेपिंग से अगर कम हो रहा है इसका मतलब वो कम हो जाएगा. अभी भी एज आई सेड कि क्लिनिकली एग्जामिन करके ही बहुत सारा इंफॉर्मेशन मिलता है. अगर उसको पेन रिलीफ वैसे भी हो रहा है टेपिंग से, तो इसका मतलब सुपरफिशियल कुछ रहेगा. मुझे नहीं लगता कुछ रप्चर की बात है यहाँ पे प्राइमा फेसी. तो आप वही ट्रीटमेंट रखिए, शायद वो 2-4 दिन में ठीक हो जाएगा.
थैंक यू.
So we'll take some quick questions. Ajit, please.
Yeah.
Surendra wants to ask.
Yeah, how specific food intake may cause back pain? बहुत difficult है food intake से back pain होना, but I have seen a couple of athletes where they eat something which causes gaseous distension in their abdomen and they start complaining of back pain. So it is very important to understand that it cannot be ruled out completely that food intake may cause back pain. Yes, it does. So in some cases, I have seen that if you get gaseous distension in your abdomen, then people might complain of back pain. So make sure that you either avoid taking those food items, or you treat the gaseous distension so that your back pain goes away. And this is what I was trying to tell you, that there is a connection between other organs and back pain as well. So as I said, some people who have constipation might come up with back pain as well. So these things should be treated accordingly. But yes, specific food intake can cause. Trunk rotation is advisable or not, but for what? I mean, Dr. Alok Pandey wants to. I didn't understand.
Alokji, can you brief what is your specialty, and like, are you a coach or physiotherapist? For what purpose you are asking this?
Dr. Alok, can you hear us? I think I just need to understand what do you mean by trunk rotation is advisable?
I think this sort of a warm up or something, like you want to ask, warm up stretching.
Yeah, see, trunk rotation again is a very good exercise any which ways. But as I said, there are different types of rotations that can be done, whether it is for fitness, or whether it is a warm-up exercise, or whether it is for a treatment, or whether it is a part of your recovery. That's why I wanted to ask you what is it that you wanted to understand. But as I said, different type of rotations that are possible in the trunk, and whether you want to do standing, whether you want to do bending, forward bending, or whether you want to do sideways, or whether you want to do on a quadruped position, like a crawling position, trunk rotation can happen in all these positions. Depending on why you want to do it or what is the motive, you can definitely do it.
So I think, guys, we are done with the question answers, and if anything remains, you can.
Yeah, they can answer. They can shoot me an email. I can try and answer them on an email.
Sure.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vikram.
CM Singh Best, you raised your hand. So you want to ask anything, please?
Hello.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah, hello.
हाँ सर, गुड इवनिंग।
Good evening, good evening.
सर मैं वैसे नेशनल आर्चरी और हैंडबॉल प्लेयर हूँ।
Okay.
और अभी लॉकडाउन से कुछ प्रैक्टिस हुई नहीं, लेकिन उसके बाद अभी जब लॉकडाउन के बाद खेलना शुरू किया तो मेरा लोअर बैक पेन लेफ्ट साइड से पेन कर रहा है। तो आप कुछ सजेस्ट कर सकते
हैं? ये यूज्ड है, अभी 3-4 दिन में नए आ रहे हैं। एक बार तो
जो आपका ये है लोअर बैक पेन, अगर काफी दिनों के बाद आपने चालू किया है, तो देन अगर आपने बराबर से कंडीशनिंग नहीं किया होगा, तो आर्चरी में ऑब्वियसली आपको पता है कि काफी सारा रोटेशन होता है मूवमेंट में, और उस रोटेशन आपको बार बार मल्टीपल टाइम्स करना पड़ता है। तो जब भी आप वो लोअर बैक लोड करते हो, और लेफ्ट साइड में ज्यादा इसलिए होता है क्योंकि वो ज्यादा टर्न होता है, तो वो अगर आपको पहले तो आपको ना बैलेंस करना बहुत जरूरी है वो मसल का। तो अगर स्पैज़म में है और पेन हो रहा है, तो पहले वो मसल बैलेंस कीजिए, फिजियो को दिखा के, किसी को रिलीज करके वो पहले ठीक करवा दीजिए, फिर उसका कोर एक्सरसाइज आप ऐड करो, और उस हिसाब से देन यू कैन गो अहेड एंड स्टार्ट ट्रेनिंग अगेन।
सर एक्चुअली मैं अभी बैडमिंटन प्रैक्टिस तो हूँ। हाँ, बैडमिंटन के हम लोग मॉर्निंग को जैसे हम लोग का, तो उसमें मेरा वार्म अप और पूरा कूलिंग डाउन सब प्रॉपर तरीके से होता है, लेकिन उसके बाद भी वो पेन हो रहा है।
कैसा है, बैडमिंटन जो है ना, वो बहुत हाई इम्पैक्ट एक्टिविटी होती है। अगर आप सिर्फ वार्म अप और कूल डाउन कर रहे हो, तो उसमें से सिर्फ वो नहीं रिकवर होगा। आपको वो मसल को कंडीशन ही करना पड़ेगा धीरे धीरे, एंड देन यू कैन स्टार्ट ऑफ। ऐसा नहीं कि आपको बंद करना है, लेकिन अगर आप उसके साइमल्टेनियसली आप उसके ऊपर थोड़ा काम करो, आपका कोर एक्टिवेशन एक्सरसाइज, अगर आपने काफी दिनों के बाद एक्टिविटी शुरू की है, तो पक्का आपको थोड़ा डिस्कम्फर्ट लगेगा, लेकिन साइमल्टेनियसली एक्सरसाइज चालू रखो और आपका खेल भी चालू रखो, तो
मैं कुछ आसन कर रहा हूँ, जैसे काव आसन, फॉरवर्ड बैंडिंग, तो जब करता हूँ थोड़ा रिलैक्स है, लेकिन फिर से वही फिर से पेन मुझे बढ़ता जा रहा। तो कुछ
करेक्ट, आप जब आसन कर रहे हो तो आप सिर्फ स्ट्रेच कर रहे हो, आप स्ट्रेंथनिंग नहीं कर रहे हो। तो आपको स्ट्रेंथनिंग करने की बहुत जरूरत है, क्योंकि आसन से या फॉरवर्ड बेंडिंग से आपको सिर्फ वो मसल स्ट्रेच हो जाता है और आपको ठीक लगता है, लेकिन जैसे ही आपको वापस इम्पैक्ट करते हो उसका इंसल्ट हो जाता है, वो वापस स्पैज़म में जाता है, पेन हो जाता है। तो आपको उसको स्ट्रेंथन करना बहुत जरूरी है। तो आप साइमल्टेनियसली एटलीस्ट हफ्ते में 3 बार उसको स्ट्रेंथनिंग की एक्सरसाइजेस करना, तो आपका पेन काफी कम हो जाता है।
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Yeah.
And with the questions,
Thanks. Yeah.
Nikita,
Thank you, Vikram, sir.
yesterday we had session related to women sports injuries, and we covered everything related to pregnancy. So you should have asked it yesterday. So we'll move ahead. Dr. Ajit Mapri, thanks a lot again for being here. We are aware that you have taken your vaccine yesterday, and you have taken some of the malaise and fever. In spite of that, you have taken pains for all of us. So thanks a lot again for being here and this elaborative lecture. I think this is going to help them a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
So, friends, now we have another renowned speaker with us, Dr. Rajat Malot. Dr. Rajat is a practicing pediatric orthopedic and deformity correction surgeon at Malot Hospital, Surya Hospital, and Manipal Hospital, Jaipur. He did his fellowship from USA, South Korea, and Australia. He has a special interest in managing childhood orthopedic issues like congenital deformities. Deformities are from the birth. That means pediatric fractures. So some of the childhood fractures, limb lengthening. So how to lengthen the limb, and developmental issues like genu valgum, genu varum, clubfoot, pediatric sports injuries, etc. So Dr. Rajat, we welcome you here on this platform. So please share your screen and go ahead. Thank you. Yes, this is visible. Please.
Yeah. So my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Vikram boss. And thanks for inviting me and giving me opportunity to speak on adolescent sports medicines injuries. And I welcome all the delegates, participants, physiotherapists, and I was amazed to see the amount of awareness and discussion and a good knowledge among all the current participants. So I have made this presentation very basic. I didn't have any, put any kind of surgical details or anything else. But in case if somebody is interested, he can be in touch with me on my WhatsApp number or on my email ID. So we'll run our presentation. First, I will let you know what is an adolescent age, and then we can discuss what are the peculiar injuries that can be present in that particular age. So adolescent age, as per the US classification, it is period between 10 to 19 years. Or you can say it is between childhood and adult. It's a very important period as the growth is still there. The child is still growing, but the mental and physically they are very strong, like adult. And hence they are more prone for such kind of injuries because they have a good stamina, they have a very high ambition. So because of that, they behave like adults, but their growth is still left. So they can be, part of very overuse injuries, or they can have, a little bit of overexertion, or you can say over enthusiasm, which can lead to very peculiar injuries that are very, very, very common in that particular age only. So in my talk, I will cover a very important thing that is called as a growing pain entity, a growth plate injuries, very peculiar to an adolescent period. What are the acute injuries that can be present in adults also, but what are the common things which can, present in an acute way while playing any kind of sports? What are the chronic overuse injuries? How they can be basic managed by a physiotherapist or by any coach without, taking a very specialized orthopedic opinion? And what is the take home message? One of the very important thing that I would like to discuss here is growing pains. If you are a coach of a children, or if you have a parent of a children's, you will notice that the child can often complain of a very acute pain in any part of the leg. Sometimes, it is on the right side, sometimes it is on the left side, and the pain is so severe, it becomes, panicky. The parents become panicky because they think that what happens to our children. He was absolutely fine and suddenly started shouting that he has a very acute pain. So what are the signs of a growing pains? They are typically present in active children. A children who is typically engaged in sports, playing basketball for 2 hours and running here and there and playing another sports. They can occur in any part of the limbs or in both the limbs as well. They are not localized. The most important thing that a growing pain is that it's not localized. A child sometimes will complain of a pain on the right side. Suddenly it will become the left hip. Sometimes it can become the right ankle. And usually, it is common in night. Where a child sleeping calmly and suddenly will wake up with a pain. So they are more common in nights. The main thing is that it's a very absolutely normal pain, nothing too panicky, because it can be resolved with a gentle massage or at the most anti-inflammatory a single dose. Next morning you will see that the child will forget everything and will again start participating in sports. So the main differential diagnosis for a growing pain is that it's never a localized pain. If a child complains pain here and there, then 90% of the time it is a growing pains, and you can try a trial of massage and anti-inflammatory drugs along with calcium and vitamin D supplements. And it usually occurs because the child is growing. His ligaments, his tendon, they get stretched because of the lengthening of the lower limbs or upper limbs, and because of that, this pain can occur. But it's a very common pain, and usually it is not very serious. Now, another very important thing which is very peculiar in adolescent period is a growth plate injury. If you see any part of the X-ray, any X-ray, if you see and you see that there is a if you can see in this X-ray, you can see a wavy line in between a bone ends and shaft. So this is called as a growth plate, and it is a plate where a lengthening of the lower limb or upper limb occurs, and this is very prone for injury in adolescent periods because it is a period of rapid growth in adolescent age, and this growth plate while playing any sports, so it can get ruptured or fractured. So this is a very important injury. It never occurs in adults because the growth plate is fused in adults. However, in adolescent, in childhood, it is open means that there is a potential for growth, and fused means there is no potential for growth. For example, adults never grow because their growth plate is fused, and adolescent children they grow because their growth plate is open. So once their growth plate is open, it is prone for injuries. There is a very common classification in our science, that is a Salter-Harris classification, which is beyond your scope, but just to highlight is that there is a pattern of growth plate injuries. There are 5 types, and each type has to be managed in a very specific way to get the desired results. For example, I will show you one example. There was a growth plate injury in a 10-year-old child while playing a soccer, and this injury was treated by a local person in terms of just immobilization. Just remember that the pain in children goes away quite drastically within a short span of time, because most of this fracture in children, they heal very fast. So if you have a child with a fracture and you just immobilize without getting a proper diagnosis, within a period of 8 to 10 days you will notice that the fracture gets healed and the child again starts walking. But however, these children after a few years developed a very ugly deformity which is called as knock knee or a genu valgum. And why does this happen? Because that particular part of the growth plate was not addressed at that time of the injury. So my very humble message is that whenever you have any children with an injury, at least get an X-ray done to know that whether it's a normal fracture or it's a growth plate injury. Because if it's a growth plate injury, we have to treat it in a very right fashion, because at that particular point of time, it might look that everything is normal, but since the child is growing, the deformity will appear after a couple of years. So what happens is that in this particular child, when it becomes 15-16 years, he gradually developed this deformity, and by the age of 16-17, he had a completely blown genu valgum deformity, which is very hard to treat. Now, we have certain children in adolescent particular area who have a very good skills, who have very good enthusiasm, but somehow they have a congenital developmental issues. And if they want to, choose sports as a career, now we have plenty of, offers for them, because now most of the, upper limb and lower limb deformities can be child really, talented if he wants to pursue his career in sports. and if he has any kind of malalignments or any kind of joint problems, we can do a thorough investigations and we can offer him a lot of corrective surgeries. I have done this children. In this children, he was a 15-year-old person, but he was very good in tennis, table tennis. So, he decided, he told me that I want to, make my limbs more, although I play a table tennis, but because of this deformity, my reflexes are not good. So he was ready for this corrective surgery, and I did his bilateral knee corrective osteotomy surgery, and we can get the desired result in such children. Now, coming to sports injuries in children's, in our India, there are not enough data, what are the percentage of children who suffer injuries. If you compare the United States data, there are almost 30 to 45 million children who are actively participate in sports, and it's become like a rule that almost every children is engaged in one or other kind of sports activities. Because of this, pediatric sports injuries are growing in a very rapid manner, and because of this there is a specialty of pediatric physiotherapists, pediatric orthopedics, they are coming up, because this is very common in United States. In other western part of the world, there are specialist pediatric doctors who can look after these injuries and give them a desired results. So almost like half of the children's they attend an emergency are because of the overuse injuries. They can have a sprain, strain, growth plate injuries, overuse injuries, sometimes heat related illness, and most of them are during the practice sessions, because they practice almost like a whole year. They used to practice. It's not like a seasonal. They pick a game and they play it for years and years. And if you see an emergency room in any hospital, 1 out of 10 children usually have a sports related injuries. Now, what are the common acute sport injury that can be present in a children? If you talk of a very superficial injuries, almost everybody knows this familiar term. Just for a revision, I'm again repeating that any kind of superficial, that's skin and subcutaneous injuries, can be classified into 3 types. One is called as bruise, another is called as abrasion, and third is called as laceration. Now we'll describe each and every type of these injuries in detail. Now, what is a bruise? Is just a collection of blood beneath the skin. If you see these bruises are very common. Normally हम ये बोलते हैं कि खून इकट्ठा हो गया skin के नीचे, and the skin overlying is absolutely normal, and there's just a by hitting on a blunt object or fall of any heavy object on the body, there's a rupture of blood beneath the skin. However, the overlying skin is absolutely normal, and the treatment of this bruise is quite easy. It's just an ice compression, and if there is a severe pain, we can prescribe them any anti-inflammatory drug. There is no need of dressing. You need not to cover it because the overlying skin is absolutely normal. So we have to just wait for a couple of days, and this bruise gets healed up automatically. And what is an abrasion? It's a little severer type of injury where there is a damage of superficial part of the skin. So if you can see that there is little bit of oozing from the skin, and you can see that the overlying skin is ruptured. However, it's not a very deep injury, and as a result of which there is no need of any suturing or any kind of antibiotics. What you need is you need to wash it with a very clean water, and then just put a oily or a paraffin dressing over it, and it usually heals within 7 to 10 days. So this is again a very common injuries, and what I've seen, some mistakes are done that they put lot of local like haldi sort of thing, or they all are contaminated because they are not clear. They can have bacteria, or they can have any kind of dust which can lead to secondary infections. So what my recommendation is to just wash them with a clean water, put a very good clean dressing, and just wait for 5 to 7 days. It heals nicely. What is a laceration? It's a slightly deeper cut, and there is a break in both the superficial and deep skin layer. It can bleed more, and that's why it needs a suturing. But here my humble request is that I've seen lot of physiotherapists, lot of other people, as soon as they say a bleeding, they immediately rush to the doctor. Instead of this, we need to first do a primary management of this laceration, because sometimes by the time you reach to a doctor, there can be a loss of almost 1 or 2 units, and that a normal laceration can become life threatening. So what I will recommend is you need to stop the bleeding first. And how do you do it? The most important thing is that you have to put a pressure over the injured part for a couple of minutes, and usually in 5 to 7 minutes the laceration bleeding usually stops. In case if it is a very profuse bleeding, or if there can be any kind of injury to the artery or major blood vessel, then what you can do is you can tie up any kind of clean cloth above the injury. For example, you have an injury just above the knee, then you have to tie a very tight bandage over the thigh so that you can stop the bleeding, and by the time you reach to a doctor, there is not enough blood loss that a simple laceration can turn up a patient into ICU. So that is what my recommendation is, that in case if there is any kind of laceration, before you reach to a doctor, put a compression over the wound. Most of the time in 5 to 7 minutes this bleeding can be controlled. If it's a very severe bleeding and it's not getting controlled, then tie something above the wound to prevent an arterial blood loss, and then you can reach to a doctor. Sometimes along with, even after tying or even after applying the compression, there is still a bleeding. In that case you can elevate the limb, so that by gravity the blood will, instead of going through the wound, it will flow back towards the heart, and it can again reduce bleeding. So these are the few methods where you can control active bleeding, and then you can consult a primary or a last super specialist doctor. Now, coming to after superficial injuries, we can come to a common acute muscle and bone injuries. Now, what are the common types of muscle and bone injuries? A very common, everybody knows, is a sprain, which is an injury to the ligament. And what are the ligaments? They usually connect bone to bone. For example, if you have a ankle sprain, which is very commonly a lateral talofibular ligament, it connects a talus with a fibula. So that's how we classify a ligament. It's a talofibular ligament, means it's connect talus and fibula. If it's a calcaneofibular ligament, which means it connects fibula to the calcanea. So there is an injury to the ligament, it will be called as sprain. And if it is an injury to the muscle, like hamstring muscle, quadriceps muscle, it will be called as strain. And what is a dislocation? When a normal joint loses its position, or there is a loss of alignment of the normal joint, it is called as dislocation. And fracture, everybody knows, it's a broken bone. Now, coming to a very common injury that can present it at any age. However, it's quite common in adolescent period because of very active sports participation, and it is called as ankle sprain. And if you characteristically see an ankle sprain, it might look very horrible, because this immediately after twisting of the foot, the swelling starts appearing. It keep on increasing, and there can, when you examine these children's, there is a characteristic pain and tenderness over the lateral malleolus and just anterior to it. And how do you treat it? Unless if you get an X-ray, and if there is no fracture, the ankle sprain usually heals by itself by following a principle which is called as RICE. And I request everyone to remember at least this RICE treatment, because it's quite handy and it's quite effective. What is RICE? R is for rest, I is for ice fermentation, C is for compression, and E is for elevation. So this again I will elaborate in next slide. So RICE treatment is quite effective for ankle sprain. And if you are, the injury is not very severe, or the ankle sprain is not very severe, you can start a mobilization with crutches. Usually it heals in 3 to 4 weeks. Sometimes it's a very severe injury like a grade 3 where there is an instability of the complete joint. And in that case, after a conservative period, usually the ligaments need to be repaired, and it's a surgical case. Now, what is RICE? Again, I will highlight a RICE because it's a very important thing. R is rest, that is rest of the injured part. Ice is for ice fermentation. Never do a hot fermentation in acute injury. I have seen lot of household people, coming just after a fall. They keep on, putting hot packs, and their swelling keep on increasing. Whenever there is any injury for initial 5 to 7 days, we have to do an ice packing. Whenever there is a chronic injuries like chronic backache, chronic knee pains, in that case we can do a hot fermentation. So in this sports injury, it is usually an acute injuries, and we have to do a ice fermentation for at least 48 hours, and then we can apply a compression in forms of bandaging, taping, bracing, etc. And fourth is elevation, that is elevate the part which is injured above the body level to prevent increase of the swelling, and in fact it decreases the swelling also. So RICE everybody should remember. Now, there are a few common examples of the muscle injuries which are very common in our body, and the most common muscle injury which is common in sports person is hamstring injuries. So that's because of the forceful hamstring contraction or a knee extension. And you can sometimes, feel a sports person can feel that something has teared on the back of the thigh, and this is called as a sprain. And there is a grade of sprain, that is grade 1 to grade 3, and sometimes grade 3 usually needs a surgical repair. However, that's very rare because most of the muscle sprains are grade 1 or grade 2, which can be adequately treated with a conservative method. What is a dislocation? You can see that there is a completely movement or normal alignment of the joint is lost. You can see that there is an abnormal shape of the joint just after the injury. And if you are able to if you are able to reduce it, that's pretty fine. Otherwise, the only thing which I will recommend is to take a primary treatment in terms of immobilization by any local available object, and then reach to the orthopedic surgeon for a definitive treatment. And you can take a painkiller in between. For example, this child presented to the emergency room with a jammed middle finger and during playing a basketball, and the physiotherapist immediately brought this to us, and we just reduced it with a traction and little bit of alignment, and immediately the pain goes away. However, just remember that even if there is a dislocation, we should always see the x-ray just after the reduction, because sometimes there is an associated fracture also with the dislocation. So it's just not reducing it and putting a bandage. We need to get an x-ray done just to confirm that there is no other injuries associated with it. This is again a finger dislocation, which is quite common in sports person, especially in cricket persons or a basketball injury, where because of the impact of the ball, the joint gets dislocated. And what we do is we reduce it, realignment, and then put a buddy taping, which is very common. That is, we need to tape the injured finger with the adjacent one for 3 to 6 weeks, and then we start a physiotherapy to gain full range of motion. Sometimes you can have a very big joints dislocated, like here we can see the patellar dislocation or a shoulder dislocation. No need to reduce it by itself. You are not untrained, because most of them, this dislocation need to be reduced under anesthesia, because they are quite big joints and their muscles around that joints are quite huge and heavy, and they need to be relaxed before we reduce them. So you can just do a primary management, and you can send it to the orthopedic surgeon. You can see obvious certain injuries are very drastic, nasty, and they can be presented during the sports, like fracture in the tibia, which is very common, and we come across this injuries quite often in young children because of the active sports participation. And they need to be, before they reach to an orthopedic surgeon, they need to be immobilized to decrease the pain. And what I will suggest is that never bring the children in a crooked position to the emergency, because sometimes doctors are busy. It's very painful condition. What you can do, you can tie up with any local objects like umbrella or any kind of scale or any kind of wooden plank, and it dramatically reduces the pain because the fractured part is immobilized. So it's our duty to know some of the basic things, being a physiotherapist or any other person who are involved in sports activities. In case if there is any injury to any part, make it at least immobilized by any local available object. For example, if something is not available, you can just tie this bandage with the opposite leg. In fact, just a simple measure will also decrease the pain to a large extent. And this is a very handy thing where you can just tie a bandage or any kind of chunni or any kind of clean cloth with the adjacent leg. However, plaster immobilization is quite ideal, and if you are trained to apply a plaster, which I think is not that tough, being a physiotherapist or any sports coach, they can have a Gypsona bandages in their emergency kit ready, and they can just make few layers of adequate size, and they can just apply it over it after dipping in the water, and it hardens up within 5 to 10 minutes, and it can be really pain saving procedure. Sometimes in children's, I have seen a lot of this epistaxis or nosebleed, because they are quite common in adolescent and children's because of the heavy blood supply in the facial region of these children's, and they are very common in children who prick also, because their skin is quite soft, and as soon as they prick it, the arterial blood gets injured and there is an epistaxis. So whenever you see such children's or any kind of such injuries, just pinch your nose for 2 to 3 minutes and breathe from the mouth. Within 2 or 3 minutes, the bleeding usually stops. The another method is to apply an ice pack, because what happens, ice pack immediately coagulates the blood vessels and it can lead to a stoppage of the blood. If it is really increasing, then you continue this measure and reach to the doctor or a hospital. Now, whenever there is a nosebleed, there are few mistakes which everybody does it. They keep on, they immediately, bend their neck forwards, which is absolutely wrong. In fact, by bringing, by flexing the neck forwards, you are increasing the pressure and there is more bleeding. Instead of this, you should just tilt your neck backwards and pinch it for a couple of minutes and the bleeding will stop.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt. Can we go on this slide? Actually, we have been attending this session, from last, couple of days. But in the earlier session, we've been told to, for the same, nose bleeding, that we have to ensure that that we are bending the head of a child into the forward direction.
I'm sorry. That's why I'm sorry. I was the slide itself shows that you should not do a bend work. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, while speaking, it got confused.
So I just got confused.
Whenever there is an acute injury, don't put your neck backwards, because there is a tendency that the bleeding will stop by bringing the neck backwards. However, the right maneuver is to bring your neck forwards to stop the bleeding.
Yeah,
Right?
actually, Rajat, we have covered all these things because we have a session from ENT expert and some of that's why. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Another very common, I think, heat stroke is also covered. Being an adolescent, it's a very general topic, so I need to touch. I'm just touching very basic thing.
Please.
Yeah. So it's very common in heat stroke because of the chronic overexertion, especially in countries like India, where children are playing in the afternoon whole day. So can be a heat stroke because of the loss of fluid and high temperature. And what are the common symptoms of heat stroke? Everybody should know that there is a continuous nausea, vomiting, high body temperature, hot flushed skin. The child can be confusing and there is a strong pulse, high rapid tachycardia. What you can do is a primary management, shift the children to a cool place. There can be a cold shower, lots of fluid, and then you can consult a doctor for a definitive management. Now, whenever there is any multi-injured person, because if you are playing a sports, it's never necessary that you can have an injury of just one part of the body. You can fall down and you have multiple injuries. In that case, as a very basic thing, I will just highlight one slide is to there are immobilizers which are available, and if it is not there, then don't immobilize spine unless the child is non-responsive. For example, if he can virtually respond that my back or my neck is okay, if the child is unconscious, never try to mobilize cervical spine or any kind of back injury, because it can further damage any injured spine. So one and the most important thing is to bring the child to the safest place, immobilize him, make him talk, and then he can respond, and then examine the whole area, upper limb and lower limb, to look for any suspected injuries. So these are the general first aid fracture slides. Is to prevent unnecessary movement, stop bleeding, apply ice pack, immobilize the injured area, and when the child is responsive, check for other injuries. Now, coming from acute injuries, a very short description on chronic overuse injuries, which are very common in adolescent periods because of the overexertion. And first very common thing which we see come across almost in my OPD practice, almost one patient daily, is an anterior knee pain in growing children. For example, in this case history, there is a 14-year-old male with a left knee pain for 1 year. Pain is characteristically located over anterior knee. And when we ask the history, the child is very active, running, jumping, or playing basketball. And there is a little bit of swelling on the front area of the knee. And the most common disease which is very commonly present like this is Osgood-Schalter's disease, or which is called as tibial tubercle apophysitis. What happens in an adolescent period, the patellar tendon is attached to the tibia through an apophysis which is called as tibial tubercle apophysis. So whenever there is an acute exertion on the knee, the patellar ligament insertion gets, suffered a lot because of the overexertion, and as a result of which it gets inflamed. And this is Osgood-Schalter's disease, and it is very common in children. And when you see and examine these children, there is a tenderness right at the tibial tubercle, and there can be associated swelling. And when you see an X-ray, you can see a little bit of fragmentation of, if you are able to read the X-ray. Otherwise, for us, what we see is a fragmentation of the tibial tubercle, and the treatment is quite simple. You have to just modify the activity. Let the children, off the sports for a couple of months, and then you can apply a little bit of ice, patellar tendon straps, and then just wait for a couple of days to heal that inflammation, and the pain usually goes away. And this as soon as this apophysis closed around at the age of 16-17, this disease automatically goes away. Another very common thing, which is very common and very similar to Osgood-Schalter, is anterior knee pain with a tenderness at the inferior aspect of the patella. So these are very two close differential diagnoses, and one is the tenderness at the tibial tubercle, and another is a tenderness at the lower pole of patella, and this is called as Sanding-Larsen-Johnson disease. This is not very common. However, the etiology is quite common because it is also common. So the etiology is quite common because it also happens with excessive running, jumping, climbing, kneeling, etc. And when you do a physical exam, there is a tenderness over the inferior pole of patella. And when we see an X-ray, there is an irregularity at the lower pole of patella. The treatment is almost similar. That is a activity modification and patellar tendon straps. Sometimes you can have a anti-inflammatory drugs. These are the common differential diagnosis of an anterior or a complete knee pain. And the most common thing which we see in adolescent injuries is Osgood-Schalter's, Sanding-Larsen-Johnson, and if there is a sports related, we can have a meniscal or a ligament injuries as well. Sometimes a very common entity that is which we come across is a heel pain in growing child, and this is very troublesome because it's usually persists for quite longer period of time, for almost like 2 to 3 years, and it's very common in children who are actively playing soccer or a basketball, because they need to use a lot of their heels, and their heels get overused. And the disease which is very commonly affect this is called as Sevier's disease, and which is a calcaneal apophysitis. The growing part of the calcaneum gets affected, and as a result of which there can be limping, and it affects the physical activities, and usually the tenderness is at the back of the heel where the Achilles tendon inserts. And when you see an X-ray, you can see the sclerosis of this calcaneal growth plate or apophysis, and this can suggest that there is an overexertion of this calcaneum, and we need to do an activity modification. Again, we can try some heel arch supports or anti-inflammatory drugs, flexibility. However, I have noted that the pain takes a lot of time, and the activity modification is the most important effective treatment in Sevier's disease. Another case history is a 16-year-old male who was playing a soccer ball, and he heard a pop from his hip, which is quite uncommon, and he has a bruising and swelling of his hip. And when we see examine this child, there is a tenderness on anterior hip side, and these are very uncommon injuries, and there can be like a tendon avulsions from the anterior side of the hip, that is from anterior superior iliac spine, anterior inferior iliac spine, or ischial tuberosity. So on a ischial tuberosity, your hamstrings are attached. On anterior inferior, we have a rectus attachment, and on an anterior superior iliac spine, we have sartorius attachment. So whenever there is a sudden forceful contraction of this muscle can get lift off from their origin, and it can be these are not very common, but we do come across such kind of injuries, and you can have a bruising and all those kind of symptoms, and if we see the X-ray, you can see a little bit of bone flake avulsed along with the muscle. So the acute treatment is again a very similar thing, that is rest, crutches, and then ice and anti-inflammatory drugs. And if they are not very much, avulsed, they can heal by itself because of the strong periosteal and the newborn formation. And sometimes they are very severe. In that case, we need to, do a surgical repair of this tendon and muscles. Now coming to another very common, this is not very common in children's because the this baseball and all these games are not very common. So what we see is a shoulder pain in adolescent period, and this is because of the excessive throwing of the ball, and it is called as little league shoulders or humeral epiphysitis because of the excessive load on the humeral epiphysis. And there is a tenderness on the proximal humerus, and they have all the signs of impingement. And when we see the X-ray, there can be a widening of the humeral epiphysis. And the treatment is again, rest and rehabilitation for 3 to 4 months, and then gradual return with a conditioning to the game. Another case history where there is a pain in the right elbow in the same baseball player, and this pain gets worsened. And when we see this, it is called as medial condyle epiphysitis, where there is a tenderness on the medial side of the elbow, that is medial epicondylitis. And again, this is because of the overexertion, and there is a pain with resisted wrist flexion and forearm pronation, because most of the pronator and flexors originates from the medial side of the elbow. And again, if you see the X-ray, there can be a little bit of fragmentation of the and widening of the physis because of the overload. The treatment again remains same, and rarely a surgery is needed. Another very common issue in adolescent is a tennis elbow, which is very common, lateral epicondylitis. There is a characteristic pain over the lateral aspect of the elbow, and if you see, there is a difficulty in lifting any objects because the pain transmits to the outer aspect of the elbow. And there is a special test which is called as Cozen's test, where we can confirm a tennis elbow. And the treatment is quite common, is everybody is doing it, that's immobilization or a tennis elbow splint, intra-articular steroids, intralesional steroids, and then activity modification. I think the spine is already covered by a spine surgeon. Just for a brief knowledge, these spine back issues are very common in gymnasts, and it is because of the excessive bending, either a backward bending or a forward bending. And there can be a stress fractures of the pars interarticularis, which is called as spondylosis. And these are, very injuries which are very, cause of chronic backache. And most commonly it is at L5 followed by L4. And if you see that there is a tenderness, pain with lumbar extension, and there is a characteristic tight hamstrings because of this spondylosis. If you see the advanced imaging, you can see that there is a fracture of the pars. Again, the treatment is very, bracing are not that effective. Avoid exertion, avoid extension, overextension, and sometimes if it is really, bothering, we might have to intervene surgically. I will sum up my presentation with this case, which I come across, just 1.5 months back while I was making this presentation. And this 5-year boy was, had a sharp cut while playing on a ground. And as soon as he fell down, a very sharp stone object hit on the volar side of the dorsal side of the wrist, and all extensors were cut along with the bone till the volar cortex was damaged. If you see, there is no extensor tendons, and almost the bone is also sharp cut. And after, this was brought by a coach to me with adequate control. That's what I want to highlight on here, is that they did a primary management. They just controlled the bleeding. They put a clean dressing and then brought it to me. And we took immediately the children to the operation theater, where we, isolated every ligament of this child, and repaired every ligament and fractures. And this was a period after a month, and this is how this changed.
Rajat, we are not getting your voice.
Should I repeat last slide?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So this is the last case which I wanted to discuss. This was a 5-year boy who had a sharp cut due to fall on the ground. He was playing some game and then he fell down on the ground. And because of the sharp stone, his dorsal aspect of the wrist got injured where all extensor tendons along with the bone was cut. And this was brought by his coach to me after following all the basic things which I mentioned is like stopping of the bleeding, washing it with clean water and putting a clean dressing over it. And then when they brought to me, we immediately took this child to an operation theater, and where we isolated every ligament of this children, all extensor ligaments, and we repaired every ligament and then fixed the bone in an appropriate way with K wires. And this is how it was completely after surgery. And within 1 month, if you see, we can see almost a near normal movement in these children. And the main thing to share this case is that with adequate awareness and with adequate, primary management, we can get the desired result, even in very severe injuries. So what are the general injuries prevention in these children is always that they should have a proper protective equipment in terms of helmets, mouth guards, body protection. Ensure that the equipment meets standard environment is safe. Another preconditioning is very important, which is almost neglected in our part of country. Everybody is more vigorous in playing rather than preconditioning and proper warm up, cool down, and treat these injuries very early to get more serious complications. So what is my take home message is adequate training and supervision can prevent these injuries. Immediate management of this injury should be known to every sports person, which is RICE, and timely definitive management by specialists can improve the outcome significantly. Thank you so much.
So thanks a lot, Rajat, for this beautiful lecture and overall demonstration. And most of our knowledge and much of our knowledge rather is being refreshed also, because we have been taught about many of these things earlier also. And you have touched almost each and every aspect related to pediatric sports injuries, related to knee, foot, and everything. So thanks a lot for that. So guys, now we are open for the question. And one thing, one comment from my side is that, Rajat, you might have noticed that how much attentive these delegates are.
Yeah,
they have been taught about these
immediately they catch the mistake
5-6 days back, and I'm really happy that they got this and they remember each and everything. So
exactly,
for doing all that. So now we are open for question and answers. So either you can type in the chat box or you can unmute yourself one by one and can ask. Rajat, you can stop sharing your screen. So shin pain. Nitin Patil wants to know more about shin pain.
What?
Shin pain.
Shin pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shin pain is quite common in young children, and most likely it is because of the growing pain and because of the overexertion. Our ligaments get stretched, and it can lead to a shin pain. Sometimes it can be a part of a compartmental syndrome, which is not that common. Whenever there is an increased pressure in the leg bones, because of that, there can be an acute compartment syndrome, which can lead to a shin pain. However, the most common reason is because of the overexertion, and it's quite common in children.
So Rajeshri Gayan wants to ask, growth plate activation is good for height. Improvement for this is only leads to injuries. Growth plate activation.
I don't think there is any kind of thing which can activate the growth except the hormones. Hormones are the things which work centrally, and it can stimulate the pituitary and other growth related hormones which can increase the growth. However, there is no direct technology or direct thing which can stimulate any part of the growth plate. So if you are taking really growth hormones, you need to consult the endocrinologist, and we should have all the things ready before we start these hormones, because when you give these hormones, there can be a serious side effect in terms of growth slippage. There can be a growth plate slippage, or there can be any other associated growth hormone related issues if not given in a right indication. So I'll suggest that if there is any kind of growth hormone, we should consult endocrinologist before that.
Okay, thank you. Rajat, there's most of the confusion many times that the strength training or the weight training is not good for like adolescent when they are growing. So do you have any take on that, or
I think my experience,
or that is a gray area? So
it's a gray area. I think if you do a proper training, I think before 18, I've seen a lot of players who are playing with full training, and they do all kind of heavy trainings and working. So I think conditioning is the right word. If you are doing it in a right way, I think the age doesn't matter that much. Yeah. So
and for flat foot, so if this is a flexible one, then what kind of exercise can you recommend to them?
So first thing, for every physiotherapist and every person, I would like to tell that there are two kind of flat foot. One is called as flexible flat foot. Another is called as rigid flat foot. Just remember that when you stand on your toes, and if the arch reappears, it is called as flexible flat foot. So if you stand on your toes and the arch reappears, it is a flexible flat foot. And when you stand on your toes and the arch doesn't reappear, it's a rigid flat foot. So if it is a flexible flat foot, I think our studies and many other international studies suggest that there is no treatment for flat foot, flexible flat foot, because if the arch has to form, it will form by itself. You can't, by any kind of orthosis or any other fancy exercises, you can't make up the arches. If a child is born to be, his child is destined to be flat foot because of the genetic or any kind of congenital issues, if he has a flexible flat foot, you can't make up arches. However, for a rigid flat foot, the thing is absolutely reverse. If you get a right treatment for rigid flat foot, this foot can be absolutely normal. So just mere telling that flat foot and we need to prescribe exercise is not sufficient. We always need to differentiate whether it is a flexible flat foot or a rigid flat foot. So what are the causes of rigid flat foot? Can be neurogenic, it can be congenital vertical talus, tarsal coalition. There are plenty of other diseases which can cause rigid flat foot, and I will personally suggest that rigid flat foot needs an expert opinion and can be easily corrected with adequate diagnosis and surgical procedures. However, for flexible flat foot, I usually have stopped recommending any kind of fancy orthosis because they don't going to work. The child gets suffered. I've seen a lot of children on UCBL splints, lot of medial arch orthosis, but ultimately within a span of 1.5 year, everybody leaves it because we can't see much of improvement with this. So for a flexible flat foot, I think just a strengthening exercise are good enough. If the parent really insists, you can try a orthosis. However, my experience with a flexible flat foot is that it usually doesn't improve. If it has to improve, it will improve by itself. There is no role of any kind of orthosis or any kind of other splints. Vikram boss.
How can they call it a flat foot? I mean, how much is much? So is there any assessment, general thing like wet test or anything? Would you like to tell them?
Yeah. So whenever you put a weight on a foot and your medial arch collapses and there is no gap on the medial side. So if your navicular and the talus start touching the floor, or in a standing X-ray, if you see that the navicular and talus lies almost at the floor, that will be called as a flat foot. And for a layman, if you see that if you are unable to pass even a scale through the medial side of the foot, then it will be called as a flat foot. Because in a standing position, there should be a gap on the medial side, which is because of the medial arch.
Okay, and something particularly for you, Luke Leon Korean wants to ask, I have heard something called early ossification of growth plate for kids who do heavy training, and that's why gymnast has growth. Is it true? Something called early ossification of growth plates.
No, there is nothing like that. Maybe because of the gymnastics and they get a early growth spurt. any kind of exercise or any kind of other activity can't do a premature closure of the physis. It's just because of the overstimulation, and because of that they achieve their desired height quite early, and because of that their growth gets completed early and their growth plate fuses. However, there is no exercise which can either stimulate or decrease the growth of that particular growth plate, because there are so many things which decides a final height of the person. That includes genetic level, his other activities, his parents height. So just mere exercise could not stimulate or decrease. Otherwise, if your Sachin Tendulkar is still at that particular height, he is around 5'2", 5'3", and he was playing any sports or doing all kind of activities right from the childhood. So my personal experience is that nothing outer environment can change the growth plate's natural closure or a growth. That's what my experience is.
Okay, thank you. And would you like to take a question on the trochanteric bursitis, although this is not related to today's talk?
I think we have never, it's not common in children's, in adolescent periods.
Okay, great. So guys, if anything else, I think we have covered each and every aspect. Rajat, in cases of knock knees,
Yeah.
Is it okay to do running activities or sports, or do you recommend?
I think there is no harm in doing these activities. However, we notice that because of the excessive loading of the medial side, these children often complain of knee pain when they do it. However, the knee pain usually goes away once they take an adequate rest. So the main thing is that they can do everything whatever they want, but for a long term, I think sequelae we just want to correct them so that they don't have any future knee pain or a medial compartment arthritis.
Okay, great. So I think, guys, all the question has been answered properly by Dr. Rajat, and thanks again, Dr. Rajat.
Thank you, sir.
For being here and for replying all the queries and for this elaborative demonstration. And I know personally, and we all know that you are a busy person, and thanks again for sparing your time. So thank you. So guys, we are done with today's session, and tomorrow again we are going to have a very special session like last Sunday. We will be talking about specific sports injuries. So we are going to talk about cricket, badminton, and cycling, boxing, football. So we are going to cover each and every aspect of them, and we are going to have very renowned and experienced speakers with us. Goodbye from now. I think we are done for today, and see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. So please try to be there on time, and so we can make a respect to our speakers and be attentive and be present over there. So thank you, guys. Logging out now. Thank you.